Good day, everybody. I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on sentence creation. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. All right. So we said that we are doing our grade 8 English lesson on sentence creations. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts Grade 8, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of sentence creation. All right, so our chapter is sentence creation. Our subject is English Language Arts Grade 8. And the lessons that we are focusing on is to create a sentence based on the model. All right. So when it comes to sentence creation, right? If we think specifically of a sentence, then we know that basic sentence creation starts with you basically having your sentence starting with a capital letter and also it ending with an end mark, right? And an end mark can either be a period, it can be a exclamation point as well as a question mark, right? So that is when it comes to sentence creation, the sentence starts with a capital letter and it ends with an end mark. But now also when it comes to creating sentences, you need to make your sentence creative and interesting so that it can be more interesting for the reader to enjoy reading whatever that you're writing, right? And when it also comes to sentence creations, you need to use different punctuation marks, use adjectives to also describe certain things that you are writing, certain nouns, certain words, and then that is basically to make your writing more interesting, right? So in order to make your writing more interesting, you can also try to use a mixture of different kinds of sentences, right? And that is where the creating a sentence comes in. You can get ideas for your new kinds of sentences by imitating sentences that you read. And in order to imitate a model sentence, right, you need to first look at its form and you need to look at its pattern, right? So either look at the form of the model sentence or you look at the pattern. You need to ask yourself what sort of words, what sort of phrases, and what sort of clauses the sentence uses and what order they are in. And then once you have, you know, ask yourself what sort of words, phrases, and clauses the sentence uses and what order they are in. Then you need to create your new sentence following that same specific pattern that you just followed. All right. So if we look at our model sentence, right? And remember, we said we need to imitate a model sentence by looking at the form or by looking at the pattern, right? So if we look at our model sentence, it says, when I stepped out into the bright sunlight. So you now that means that you're describing the sunlight, right? From the darkness of the movie house, I had only two things on my mind: Paul Newman and a ride home. So that is our model sentence. And with our model sentence, we need to create a new sentence. And we said that is by basically following the same pattern of the sort of words, the phrases, and the clauses that is being used and the order in which it is written in. And if we were to now create a new sentence based on our model sentence, right? So if we create a new sentence based on our model sentence, right, then we can say, as long as our secret hideout stayed hidden. from other people. So as long as our secret hideout stayed hidden from other people in the deep deserted forest, you see they're describing the deep deserted forest, we would have our lifelong dream, no parents and plenty of beef jerky. And if you look at both of the sentence, right, which is the model sentence as well as our new sentence, right, which we have recreated from our model sentence, it says both of these sentences they use subordinating conjunctions, which is when and as long as to introduce the first clause. Because it with the model sentence they say when I stepped out into the bright sunlight, whereas the new sentence starts with as long as our secret hideout stayed hidden. Those words or those sentences starts with a subordinating conjunction, which is when, as well as long as. And also both of the sentences they use prepositional phrases So we see that both of these sentences they use prepositional phrases, and the prepositional phrases that is being used within that sentences is into the bright sunlight. So into is the word, and from within the sentence of from the darkness of the movie house, as well as from other people, as well as in the deep deserted forest. So in, into, from, and another from. And those prepositional phrases that is used within the sentences, right, it is to modify parts of the first clause within that sentence. Right? And both of these sentences, right, they use colons, right? The one sentence uses the colon after mind, and the other sentence uses colon after dream, right? So both of the sentences they uses colons, and the colons are there to introduce final noun phrases, right? So these sentences they use colons, and the colons are there to introduce the final noun phrases. For example, in the first sentence we had it introduces Paul Newman and a ride home. And the new sentence introduces no parents and plenty of beef jerky. So remember earlier on when we started the lesson and then we made mention of writing or creating new sentences, and then I'd mentioned that when we try to write sentences, we need to make our sentence more interesting, right? So we need to make your writing more interesting. And I also mentioned that you need to use punctuation marks. And different punctuation marks either introduces or shows us different ways or gives us different ideas or tells us more about the specific sentences. It either modifies the sentences, introduces phrases, right? It basically describes certain words within the phrases or within the sentence, within the paragraph. Let's put it like that. All right. Conjunctions are there to join certain words, right? So those punctuations and certain words that are used within the sentences are there to modify the sentences and to make the writing more interesting. Because if I were just to write a normal sentence, then it will sound very bland, right? It will just be a sentence where we start with a capital letter and we end with a period, for example. But as soon as we, for example, recreate our sentence by making it more interesting, right? We mix different kinds of sentences by also using punctuation marks, right? We use different words to describe different things or different nouns by imitating also sentences, then that makes reading more interesting as well as writing more interesting. And we said when it comes to model words, right, then we need to imitate a model sentence. We look at the form, we look at the pattern, right? And we need to ask ourselves all sorts of questions like what sort of words are being used, what sort of phrases are being used, and what sort of clauses are being used within the sentences and what order they are in. And then once we have asked ourselves what kind of words, what sort of phrases, and what kind of clauses are being used within the sentence and the order that they are in, then we then create a new sentence following that same specific pattern. And then if we look at both of our sentences after, for example, creating a new sentence, then we need to compare our sentences to see what are the things that are similar within that sentence. Where have it been joined? What does it introduce? What does the new phrases say? Where do we have maybe words that describes, right? But it needs to basically correspond with both of the sentences. And that is when we create a new sentence based on the model. You need to look at subordinating conjunction, coordinating conjunctions, prepositional phrases, prepositions, maybe some adjectives, adverbs. What does a colon tell us, right? What does the comma maybe say? We need to pause and then continue. But each punctuation mark has its own specific way, and it also has its own specific reason as to what it introduces and what it says. All right. So now we're going to aplusstudents.ca where we are going to create a sentence based on the model. And we said that our chapter is sentence creation, and we are going to create a sentence, oopsie, based on the model. All right, so we already went over how to recreate or how to create a sentence by making writing more interesting, right? By mixing different kinds of sentences and getting mixing different kinds of sentences. That it means that we get ideas for new kinds of sentences by imitating the sentences that you read, right? So now we're going to look at our activities and then we're going on to our test, right? This is now where we are going to be reading the model sentence from Steinberg or Steinbeck's John Steinbeck's Canary Row. And then we are going to use that words that is given and phrases to create a new sentence that matches that specific model sentence, right? And remember, they say that we need to also, in order to imitate a model sentence, look at the form, look at the pattern, look at how it is basically being used. We need to ask ourselves the sort of words, phrases, and clauses in the sentences that is being used and what order they are in. And then we create our new sentence that follows that very same pattern. All right, so it says, during the millennium that frogs and men have lived in the same world, it is probable that men have hunted frogs. So during the millennia that frogs and men have lived in the same world, it is probable that men have hunted frogs. We now need to look at that sentence, then use the words and phrases given to create a new sentence that matches that model of Jane Steinbeck. I'm going to put numbers on the sentences or the phrase. I'm going to put numbers on the phrases so that we can then, let's say, basically reread our or create our sentence based on that instead of me having to rewrite it, right? So we can then start by number one, by throughout the time that my brother and I, let's make this one number two, were in the same bluegrass band. Let's go with number three. It was truly shocking. Number four, that we never had one disagreement, and then we have our period, right? Which means that our sentence comes to an end, period. And if we use those words and phrases to create the new sentence, it will read as follows. It says, throughout the time that my brother and I were in the same bluegrass band, it was truly shocking that we never had one disagreement, period. And that is how we basically created a new sentence that matches the model, right? So that is our sentence. We started with throughout the time that my brother and I were in the same bluegrass band. It was truly shocking that we never had one disagreement, period. Right? And if we look at that specific sentence again that we just created or recreated, all right, then we will say, it is correct. Throughout the time that my brother and I were in the same bluegrass band, Yibo, It was truly shocking, yes, that we never had one disagreement, right? So, if we look closely at the parts of the model sentence as well as how they match with the parts of the new sentence, oopsie, then we can look at the words that are basically similar or how the phrases are the same. All right, let's look at the next one. We need to read the model sentence from Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises. So we need to read the model sentence from Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Always Rises. And then we're going to use the words in blue given to create a new sentence that matches the model. All right, it says, it felt comfortable to be in a country where it is so simple to make people happy. So it felt comfortable to be in a country where it is so simple to make people happy, right? Now we need to use the words and phrases to create a new sentence that matches that specific model. I'm going to once again put numbers on it and then we can read it from there. So we're going to start with she was frightened to walk. Let's go with through the forest. So she was frightened to walk through the forest. Let's go with after it grew too late to consider herself safe. Let's see if that sentence even makes sense. It says she was frightened to walk through the forest after it grew too late to consider herself safe. Sounds like that sentence does not really balance. Let's see. It doesn't give us that one. But she was frightened to walk through the forest after it grew too late to consider herself safe, period. Ah, they don't give us that one. All right, let's look at the next one. It says we need to read the model sentence from James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. It says McCann went briskly to and fro among the students, talking rapidly, answering rebuffs, and leading one after another to the table. So once again, it says McCann went briskly to and fro among the students, talking rapidly, answering rebuffs, and leading one after another to the table. We now have to use the words and phrases to create a new sentence that matches that specific model. All right, so once again, once we recreate or create our sentence, I'm going to put numbers on there and then from there we will read it again. Let's start with I raced. So we can say I raced Let's go with number two. I race from room to room in my apartment, mumbling angrily, packing my things, and slamming doors behind me in fury. That is when we create a new sentence. It says, I raced from room to room in my apartment, mumbling angrily, packing my things. You see how they are describing, and slamming the door behind me in fury. Because instead of just saying, from my room, I raced from room to room in my apartment in fury. They are describing how he really felt and what he basically did. Yeah, so number one is I raced. Well done. So I raced from room to room in my apartment, mumbling angrily, packing my things, and slamming doors behind me in fury. Right? All right, let us go to our test, right? Where we are going to create a sentence based on the model. All right. It says, it felt comfortable to be in a country where it is so simple to make people happy. We need to use the words and phrase to create a new sentence that matches the model. Is it the first one here? It says, she was frightened to walk. So, yeah, is it she was frightened to walk through the forest after it grew too late to consider herself safe? Or do we say it felt comfortable to be in a country where it is so simple to make people happy? What is when we create the sentence, is it option one or option two? Which one is correct? This is now when we are creating or recreating the sentence. So it's option one or option two. All right, then if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we will start with she was frightened to walk through the forest after it grew too late to consider herself safe. So well done, that is correct. All right, it says the model sentence says, I gaze out the window at our family, a little knot on a fringe of tundra waving in the wind. So I gaze at the window at our family, a little knot on a fringe of tundra waving in the wind. So now we need to use these words and phrase to create a new sentence that matches that model. We're going to start with Anna surged down the dusty path, right? So it's option one that says Anna surged down the dusty path towards the makeshift finish line, a single piece of twine at waist height stretched tightly between twin trees? Or is it I gaze at the window of family, a little knot on a fringe of tundra waving at the door? We need to choose the correct option. That shows that we are creating this new sentence to match the model. All right, then if we were to choose the correct option, we would go with option one, which is Anna surged down the dusty path towards the makeshift finish line, a single piece of twine at waist height stitched tightly between the twin trees. Period. So option one, it is. So well done. Option one is correct. All right, let's continue. It says rice paddies. Rice paddies need acres of flat irrigated land, which we simply didn't have. So I knew we couldn't be growing it. So rice paddies need acres of flat irrigated land, which we simply didn't have, so I knew we couldn't grow it. And if we were to recreate that sentence, right? So rice paddies, it's like flooded fields that is used to cultivate rice in the southern and eastern Asia. It's like fields of rice. Rice is grown under the partially flooded conditions. Okay. All right, so now we're going to use the words and phrases to create a new sentence that matches the model. Is it option one? A mural needs a team of loyal, reliable workers, which hopefully can find, or else it seems this project will be taking a long time? Or do we say rice paddies need acres of flat, irrigated land, which we simply didn't have? So I knew we couldn't be growing it. Which option is correct? Is it option one? A mural needs a team of loyal, reliable workers, which hopefully we can find, or else it seems this project will be taking a long time, period. Option one or option two? All right, then if we were to choose the correct one, we will say a mural needs a team of loyal, reliable workers, which hopefully we can find, or else it seems this project will be taking a long time, period. We're going with option one. Because remember, we need to use the words and phrases to create a new sentence that matches the model. So over here, and it starts with a mural needs, right? So option one, but while trying. All right, let's go to the next one. We need to read the model sentence from James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And then we're going to use the words below and phrases to create a new sentence that matches the model. So the model sentence is McCann went briskly to and fro amongst the students, talking rapidly, answering rebuffs, and leading one after another to the table. When you're answering rebuffs, right? If you look at the word rebuff, it means to either reject someone or something in an abrupt or ungraciously manner, right? It's almost like if somebody responds, then you are being rude to that person. You're responding to the person in a rude manner. It's like, I don't even want to hear type of thing, right? That is what rebuffs means. So McCann went briskly to and from among the students, talking rapidly, answering rebuffs, and leading one after another to the table. We now need to use the words and phrases to create a new sentence that matches the model. And if we look at these words here at the bottom in blue, it starts with I raced, right? So we can say I raced from room to room in my apartment, mumbling angrily, packing my things and slamming doors behind me in fury. If you look at this sentence that we created here, both of these two people are quite angry, right? So both of them are angry, both of them are moving one from one place to another, expressing how they feel, the anger, the fury, right? That is basically what these two sentences are about. So if we were to look at or to create a new sentence, we can start with I raced from room to room in my apartment, mumbling angrily, packing my things and slamming doors behind me in fury, right? So that is option one is our correct answer. All right, then it says our model sentence from Holly Goldberg Sloan's Counting by Seven says, the school was only blocks from our house, and it was here that I first committed the crime of questioning the system, right? So the school was only blocks from our house, and it was here that I first committed the crime of questioning the system. We now need to use the words and phrases to create a new sentence that matches the model. All right, if we look at the words in blue, right, we will start with it was weeks until the game. So it was weeks until the game, yet it became clear that the team wouldn't win it without inventing new plays. So now we need to look at these two sentences. Which one is the correct option? Option one or option two? Option one says it was weeks until the game, yet it became clear that the team wouldn't win it without inventing new plays. Or the school was only blocks from our house, and it was here that I first committed the crime of questioning the system. Which one is our correct answer when it comes to creating a sentence? Option one or option two? And if we were to choose the correct one, we will choose option one that says it was weeks until the game, yet it became clear that the team wouldn't win it without inventing new players. Period. And option one is correct. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on sentence creation. We see that you'll have a model sentence, right? And with the model sentence, we need to make sentence writing interesting, right? By using different punctuation marks, asking ourselves different types of questions, right? And then we need to then create a new sentence based on that very same model that we have used, right? Following the specific patterns, clauses, phrases that we have used also in when it came to our model sentence. With model sentence as well as recreating a sentence, it's all about making your sentence interesting, using the adjective to describe your sentences, right? Because the reader need to be able to be enticed when you are reading, or let's say when they are reading whatever you have written. All right, so this is the end of our lesson on sentence creation. Thank you very much, Gary, for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.